My name is Stephanie Boozer, and I'm with CUGC HQ, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect with EG Innovations. Going to be talking with Bala Vaidhinathan, the CTO of EG, on choosing a Citrix monitoring strategy. And he's going to be going over all the key capabilities you need to look at and common pitfalls to avoid. Let's see, next slide. All right, so for those of you who registered earlier and a few weeks ago, you might have seen that Sam Jacobs was our moderator today, and he had a personal emergency arise. Everything's okay, but he couldn't be with us today. And so we are excited to have Tim Mangan taking his place today to watch all your questions for us. Tim is a leader of the Boston CUGC group, and he's also a CTP and a recent recipient of the CTP Fellow Award. Tim, would you like to come on and say a few things about yourself and talk about the questions?
Hello, everybody. So obviously you've seen who I am. I'll take a look at your questions as we go along. We've got a couple of time periods that we've got scheduled to do those questions, so you might not get answered right away, but we will try to get to all of the questions before we're done.
Thank you, Tim. And just as a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording probably sometime tomorrow at the earliest, and you'll get a link to the slide deck presentation as well. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Bala. He is the CTO, as we mentioned earlier, of EG Innovations, and he's done a couple of webinars here with us at CUGC, and we're happy to have him back today. So with that, I'll hand things off to you, Bala.
Yep. Thank you, Stephanie and Tim, for today, and thanks everybody else for joining us today. Let's quickly start with the agenda. Today we will talk about why we should have a Citrix monitoring strategy, what is available from Citrix, what are the key requirements for this monitoring strategy, and what are the pitfalls that you should avoid. By the end of the webinar, my goal is to equip you with the fundamentals of a sound monitoring strategy for Citrix, what to look for and what to stay away from. This will ultimately lead you to running your Citrix environments better and delivering better user experience. Like Tim said, we will have a couple of slots in between for Q&A, and we also have a couple of polls for you guys to participate. So a little bit about EG Innovations, now who we are, what we do. We are an industry leader of proactive performance management platform solutions. We enable your IT services to run better, faster, and that enables you to deliver optimal user experience while getting better ROI for your IT investment. We are founded in 2001. We've been a Citrix Premier Technology Partner since 2004, so we go way back. We worked with Citrix customers for a decade and a half now, and our solution is being used in some of the largest Citrix deployments in the world. So that's kind of our background. That's where we come from. We have success across the globe. We've been working with Citrix accounts since the turn of the century, effectively. It's been a long time, and we've seen many versions of Citrix come and go. We've worked with a lot of largest Citrix deployments across the globe, helping them manage their environments better, helping them deliver better end user experience, and of course, learning a few things along the way. Now, we feed all this knowledge back into our solution to make sure it delivers the best value for today's Citrix customers across various stages of Citrix usage. We've obviously been well recognized for this over the years, for our technology and for our ability to deliver value to our customers. With that background, let's get back to the topic, right? Why talk about Citrix monitoring strategy? For that, I want to cite a survey which says 90% of the enterprises are not fully satisfied with the way they manage their Citrix environment. 67% use 2 or 5 tools to manage their Citrix infrastructure. 76% spend more than 2 days a week on troubleshooting. So a lot of this might not be news to most of you who are on the call, which is probably why most of you are on this call today. One of the interesting things is the reason for the challenges. Overall, we know that Citrix is one of the most performance-sensitive applications that is out there today. Again, citing another survey, 93% believe Citrix is one of the most performance-sensitive services in the enterprise networks. Now, we will get into the reason for this later on and why this happens and how to manage this and how to get on the other side of it. But first, let's do a quick poll, okay? Stephanie, if you can help me here. Audience, you can choose all the options that you would like to choose. This is not just one to choose. You can choose multiple options. So basically, what are the biggest performance management challenges you face? Are they user experience issues? Does it take too long to troubleshoot problems? Unable to find out root cause of the issues? Reactive as opposed to being proactive, always chasing behind problems rather than getting ahead of it. And last but not least, help desk has no idea, so too many things getting escalated to the Citrix team. So feel free to select the things that challenge you today, things that are problems for you today, and things that you would like to get addressed. And like I said, you can select multiple things. Maybe, Stephanie, we can give them a few more seconds before closing it.
Sure. I have about 60% voted, so let them see if we can come up a little bit more. All right, I'm going to close it out. Okay. And I will share the results. Can you see that?
I can see it in about a 1-inch box on the top right corner of my screen.
Okay, so your top answer was unable to find the root cause of issues. That was split. The next one was split with the reactive as opposed to being proactive, and user experience issues. They both had 62%. That was followed by takes too long to troubleshoot, and last was help desk escalates too many issues.
So pretty much everything hit above 50%. So we are right on the mark in terms of the most common issues concerning the Citrix performance management landscape today. So thank you for taking the survey, everyone. And so let's try to see how we can mitigate this, how we can get ahead of this. So user experience is a key for Citrix success. We all know that. When a performance problem happens, the user is basically going to say, hey, this doesn't work. I don't know what is going on here. But the onus falls on the Citrix administrator, the Citrix service owner, Citrix manager to understand what is going on and resolve it. Now, the problem diagnostics today looks like this. There is a bunch of different tools. There is a bunch of different things that you can connect into and start looking at. But there's no single pane of glass, or there is no single point that looks at your entire Citrix service. You have to look at multiple different tools to get a picture of what is going on. And it's a struggle. So why are we here today? Where we have to typically log into a bunch of different tools to try and figure out what's going on with the Citrix environment. Let's check what is available from Citrix in terms of Citrix monitoring tools. The standard is your Citrix Director. And then you've got, from an enterprise standpoint, you've got Citrix Netscaler monitoring. And then from Platinum, you get the SCOM management pack, formerly known as ComTrade. It gives you more Netscaler features. So let's look at each and every one of them and what they can do for us. So Citrix Director is very effective for small organizations. It can give you quick insight into Citrix sessions and Citrix logons and things like that.
Excuse me, Bala. It looks like we can see your control panel.
Oh, okay. Let me get rid of that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So we have good insights into Citrix sessions and virtual channels from Citrix Director. Citrix Logon Breakdown is great. Citrix Delivery Controller error reporting, and you can do control actions, which a lot of administrators love. So you get this by default from Citrix Director. While these are good functions, the downside of it is it only focuses on the Citrix stack. As we will go along, we will see why that is not an effective strategy when it comes to performance management and monitoring in Citrix. Visibility mainly to the delivery controller and VDAs provides primarily a user-based perspective. So it just gives you user sessions, and it gives you details into user sessions, and the whole world is visible through that perspective. If you've got 100 users, 200 users, that's good. But for medium and large scale environments, this tends to become too cumbersome because there's just too many users. And if you have to look at everything from a user perspective, it doesn't scale well in a real life environment. And it's more of a help desk tool. It's on-demand analysis. It's not proactive. It's not telling you what could potentially be happening if you don't fix something. Then the next one is the Netscaler Insight Center. So this is really good. This gives you the network visibility that we haven't had from Citrix before. It can give you details from an ICA, session handshake, start and stop. It just generally all the perspectives that Netscaler touches, collects metrics from various aspects of its functionality. So that gives you good visibility and insight into Citrix sessions and application launches, visibility into network connections. But if the problem is outside of the network, if the problem is on the Citrix server or within a Citrix session, you don't get the visibility that you need. It has zero visibility into non-Citrix tiers that could impact your Citrix environment. Like storage, virtualization, and of course it requires a platinum license. Last but not least, let's look at the SCOM management pack. This is effectively collecting all the Citrix metrics that you would need to see from a Citrix platform and pumping it into the SCOM console. Inherently, there are a couple of issues with it. It is good for SCOM users. It gives you all the metrics you need from a Citrix perspective, but it's like a pure metric form. It's got some reports that are good to use. You will get some high-level data, but mostly the views that you get is the SCOM view that has tables and metrics and metrics and metrics. So essentially, you're forced to look into a lot of metrics without a big picture view or without an understanding of how this works. It's not ideal for a Citrix administrator. I think we've had this come up with a lot of our accounts where basically there is SCOM, but they look into SCOM and they go, this doesn't look like a technology that I can use in today's environment. It has the tree structures. If you have a lot of Citrix users, it's not very easy to use. Drill downs are minimal. It needs a platinum license. The visibility into other areas outside of Citrix is also lacking. Now, if I summarize all this, this will kind of explain why we are where we are today, where we have to log into a bunch of different tools and try to manually figure out what is going on when there is a Citrix issue. The monitoring tools from Citrix are primarily a silo solution, limited end-to-end visibility, limited end-user experience, no root cause analysis. It is metric-focused, reactive rather than proactive. The best way I can summarize this is Citrix exposes a lot of metrics. Collecting metrics is not rocket science. They expose a lot of metrics, but the primary purpose of them exposing those metrics is to make sure that they can establish or they can prove that it's not a Citrix problem. They don't take the next step to try and help us fix this problem. Their goal is to say, hey, everybody blames Citrix for all the problems. I want to show enough metrics from Citrix to say it's not my problem. But can you help me fix the problem? They don't take that next step. So we are stuck with, okay, now I know it's not a Citrix problem, but I still own Citrix. Unless I can find out where the problem is, it's still my problem to solve. So that's the problem with the tools that we have today. It's good enough for service desk use at times and for small environments at times. Citrix is improving, but as I said, the focus is still trying to absolve Citrix rather than true performance management. Now, with that background, what do we need for Citrix performance monitoring? Let's start looking at some real situations and what is driving us towards this need. Citrix has long changed from being an application into a platform. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, if there are long-time Citrix users on the call, you know what I'm talking about. It used to be ZenApp, and that was pretty much it. So you looked at the ZenApp servers and you looked at data controller, you were good. There used to be something called as ZenFuse, but long time ago. But now Citrix is a full-fledged platform, right? And that means you have to manage it like a platform, not just look at a few silos and call it a day. There are a lot of new technologies that Citrix is coming up with, which is great for our end users, but it also provides management challenges for us to manage the complexity. A lot of people are still struggling to move from the older versions of the Citrix into a newer version because it's a complete rip and replace, and you need a performance management solution that can help you guide along the way, give you the right baselines, and move you in the right direction. So there are a lot of drivers for us to look for an effective performance monitoring strategy for Citrix. And another thing we need to consider just as importantly is Citrix is becoming a platform. Citrix is a platform. That means you're not just looking. If you look at Citrix performance management, it's not just XenApp and XenDesktop. You've got to look at all the different elements that make the XenApp and XenDesktop go, the Citrix workspace services go, your Citrix share file, your provisioning services, your Netscaler, your Storefront, if you've got mobile, Zen Mobile, Citrix Cloud. And then on top of this, your applications run and the client-facing applications run. And you need to be able to get the entire visibility end-to-end for you to effectively manage performance from Citrix. So let's take a look at some details. Citrix monitoring requirements. So what are the things that we need to have, must have in a Citrix monitoring tool? And this will get into a little bit of detail into various stacks. So resource usage on the servers, that's important. Citrix sessions and their states, that's important. Session reporting for audit and compliance, that's important. Citrix user experience is important. You need to look at virtual channels, application usage, virtual desktop activity, GPUs and other new capabilities, and then last but not least, Citrix license usage. So it's not just XenApp monitoring. So server monitoring is key. If you have a virtual platform, you need to look at the virtualization platform and how it provides the VMs and the resources being consumed and that correlation. So these are the things you look for in server monitoring. Is it sized correctly? Is the page file usage high? Are there many disk reads and writes? Any processes leaking handles? While this is great, this is not a single piece that's going to give you everything that you need. So you will see all the different pieces as we go along. On monitoring Citrix sessions and states, how healthy are the Citrix sessions? You need to look at the end-to-end overview of the Citrix session, the connection, the port. Are the sessions getting dropped? How frequently are they getting dropped? Are many sessions inactive? Who logged in? When for compliance, auditing, for billing? Monitoring Citrix user experience. Now, this is another set of details that a lot of you have possibly looked at, but you need to look at user experience from multiple different perspectives. It's not just user experience in Citrix is not just defined as latency. There are a lot of different things that go into making an effective user experience, and that's a topic for a webinar in itself. But for now, in this, we want to touch on how long did Citrix logon take. So you need to look at Citrix logon. You need to look at application launch. You need to look at latency. You need to look at, you need to have historical data for troubleshooting. You need to look at user behavior for latency. And then there are a couple of primary approaches for looking at user experience. One is synthetic monitoring, which emulates users, and it is able to catch things that break when the users are not connected. While that is great, while you should have it, but you also need to complement that with real user monitoring. So monitoring real user loads, actual workloads, direct measure of what users are seeing from the client, from network, from the server. And you need a combination of these two approaches to effectively manage Citrix user experience. So there is a lot of detail here that I'm going through, and this is to give you a perspective of all the different levels that you need to look into to effectively monitor Citrix platform. So ICA virtual channels. What is the input-output line speed? How much bandwidth is user session consuming? How much of this is audio bandwidth, video bandwidth, printer bandwidth? You would be surprised how many times we find problems at customer places where somebody has given a printout long time ago, and that is cycling through right now, and that is causing a lot of chaos with the user experience. But they have no idea that this is because of the print job. And when you look at the printer bandwidth, it is quite obvious that this is because of the print job. So you need to monitor a lot of these things constantly. Citrix application usage, it's another effective way to see how Citrix is being used and how users are interacting with Citrix, and if there are any applications that are culprit in terms of resource consumptions, and how long, how busy, how popular they are. Monitoring VDI, of course, you need to look at all these level of details for VDI too. What applications are being accessed within VDI? What is the VDI end user experience? Ideally, you shouldn't be looking at an agent deployed on every VDI desktop. If somebody is opening a browser and starts using browser, you need to be able to track what kind of URLs they're accessing. Monitoring GPUs. This is something new that is becoming more and more critical these days. GPUs used to be for gaming consoles long time ago, but they are now part of everyday systems. And this is something that is becoming more and more important to track. You need to be able to see GPU bottlenecks and identify, isolate them so they cannot impact your user experience. Citrix license usage. You'd be surprised how many people neglect monitoring Citrix license usage and have issues because of that. From a licensing standpoint, you need to be concerned about your peak usage, not your average usage, right? So all these things are key requirements when it comes to a Citrix performance monitoring strategy. Delivery controller. So now we are looking at elements that are outside of Citrix that are going to impact Citrix. Our key services running, is delivery controller responsive? Is it time synchronized with the Active Directory? Now, every single question such as this will answer, will give you a key answer that will give you an indicator of the health of your environment. Citrix Storefront monitoring. Storefront could potentially be a single point of failure if we are not monitoring it effectively. Are the stores accessible? Is the storefront available and responsible? Are the connections and authentication failures happening? Any unusual activity in the storefront? Netscaler. Netscaler needs to be looked at in depth. You need to be able to get all the metrics that you're getting through Netscaler Insight from Netscaler. So there are a ton of metrics available through Netscaler Insight, HDX Insight, and you should be able to get all of them in your ideal Citrix monitoring strategy. Firewalls blocking application access, load balance virtual servers down or slow to respond. How long are the ICA sessions happening? These are valuable information that you need to have. Provisioning services. This is a fundamental, we've seen a drastic increase in the adoption of provisioning services across our customer base, and this is a key area of your Citrix service to manage. How much I/O from cache versus the disk are the timeouts at the client side, excessive vdisk retries, all these are indicators of the health of your provisioning services. And I just want to reiterate, I'm going through some of these things a little bit faster, but the recording of these of this information, all these slides will be available in SlideShare. This is to give you the depth of metrics that you need to have, and you can refer to it from the recording from the PowerPoint slides that you're going to get the link for. If I go through every single metric in detail, we'll probably be here for a better part of a couple of days. So, Zen Mobile and ShareFile. A few years ago, so we work closely with Citrix, and we know that Zen Mobile is something that they wanted to expand and push a lot, and there was a significant adoption some time ago. This thing seems to have cooled down a little bit, but still, if you have Zen Mobile, these are the things that you need to make sure it's available. A lot of people do have ShareFile, so you need to have ShareFile connectivity being checked. Local storage zones, are they working? Any devices with blacklisted applications? The supporting infrastructure. So non-Citrix infrastructure. Why should I care about the non-Citrix infrastructure? We'll see in a bit, but there is a lot of details that you need to make sure you're collecting from the Citrix supporting infrastructure, because Citrix is dependent on these infrastructure pieces to be effective. And if these infrastructure pieces or applications or platforms have any issues, they are going to impact your Citrix user experience. And if you don't have visibility into them, or if you don't have a way to track these metrics, then you don't have a complete view into your Citrix performance management. So key Citrix metrics to be monitored. And this is an overall summary, if you will. So user experience, HDX channels, user and application activity, XenApp, XenDesktop sessions, Citrix tiers, and then the supporting infrastructure. We saw some of the details in these tiers in the past few slides. Let's take a look at the Citrix delivery overview. Citrix is not a simple service delivery. I was looking for a good architecture diagram to represent Citrix, and there were so many that are out there, people deploying Citrix in so many different ways and interesting ways. And even with our customers, we've seen a lot of different ways in which this is being delivered. But the one fundamental thing is it's never one or two layers. It's always multiple layers that are interdependent on each other. So here is an illustrative example. You've got physical virtual resources, you've got the control layer from Citrix, you've got the access layer, and then your XenApp, XenDesktop services that are running on top. They provide the desktops, hosted apps, Zen client, remote PC, on top of which runs your applications. So the key here is, if you really look, Citrix is an interface delivery mechanism. It is a way in which the applications that the users use are delivered to them. It's not something that you didn't know, but if you really think about it, this is why whenever there is a problem in the application or in the network or anywhere, people tend to think it's a Citrix problem, because all they see is they're connecting into Citrix and they're using an application. And if anything happens, it must be Citrix. So that's why Citrix, being the delivery mechanism, being the delivery interface, gets the brunt of issues pointed at them. For the most part, for all the issues that don't even belong in Citrix, so you get the fingers pointed at Citrix. So it is important. So on top of the applications that are being delivered is where the customers and the user sessions and the users are. So they are connecting into the Citrix. They're experiencing Citrix through the applications for the most part. So that means the key pitfalls to avoid here would be just focusing on user experience. If you just look at user experience, what you will end up having is you will get the same kind of information that the users are going to complain about, but instead of them calling you and saying you have a problem, you will find out about it from the solution saying, hey, you have a problem, this is the user experience issue. But why you're having the problem, what you need to do to address it, you would not have any clue. If you just look at the access layer from a Netscaler perspective, network perspective, look at everything from the network and see how it is working, because most problems are network latency issues, right? If you take that perspective, you're missing out on a huge set of other pieces that need to be managed. Without that, you're not going to have a complete visibility into the Citrix infrastructure. Control layer. If you just look at the control layer, you still have, so there are tools that are out there that focus on one of these approaches. They do a fantastic job of tracking user experience. That's great, but still it is reactive. By the time user experiences an issue and you track that the user is experiencing an issue, it's usually caused by something that is happening elsewhere. And until you know what that issue is, you've not made a lot of progress in addressing that problem. You just know that there is an issue now. And the same comes to if you're looking at access layer or if you're looking at deep dive into Citrix layers, that's great. But it's, excuse me, it's still one piece of the puzzle. You get all the Citrix metrics you want. The best you might be able to say is to say, hey, this is not a Citrix problem. But at that point, the problem needs to get resolved because the Citrix users are the ones who are getting impacted. And ultimately, it's the Citrix service that's being impacted. So unless you have the visibility that you need across the stack, across these multiple tiers, you are not able to effectively monitor and manage Citrix environments. So before we go to another poll, I want to take a break here and see if you guys have any questions so far.
Okay, folks, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the window. We'll see if we can get to them. A question here for you, Bala, has to do with a favorite question of mine, which is how do you feel about doing this monitoring in terms of agent versus agentless? What's your strategy on that?
Right, that is an excellent question, and I would say when you look at monitoring strategy, you need to look at a solution or you need to look at a strategy that allows for both. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to agent-based and agentless. Both of them have their advantages and disadvantages. So the key when you're looking for your monitoring strategy is to look for a solution that can provide you with both. In some cases, you can only do agentless. For example, Netscaler, you can install an agent on that. But at the same time, agent-based approach also has some advantages. So you want to have that flexibility, to have both agent-based and agentless, to be able to do both in your monitoring strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can generally get better information if you can get an agent on there.
That is correct.
What about the performance associated with putting these agents out?
That's a good question. And typically, when you put an agent out, you need to look for a lightweight agent. Whether it's agentless or agent-based, the mechanisms are typically similar, where you collect metrics and the tools out there go out and run some commands or look at perform, do what they need to do and look at the APIs and collect metrics. You want to look for systems that are tuned to have the least amount of impact on the system in which they're collecting metrics. Right, and when it comes to agent-based, that's even more important because the agent is running on the system, so you want to always look for the least amount of resource consumption when it comes to having agents. And we talked about advantages and disadvantages of having both approaches, right? I mean, one of the things that we have seen in some cases based on the security restrictions and things that you need to go through in an agentless approach, Depending on the customer, depending on how their network is set up, we have seen that agent-based approach actually uses less resources than the agentless approach because of the different rules that needs to go through to get into the system.
Yeah, so some of those interfaces that the agentless approach has to go through, like WMI, I mean, those are just performance pigs, and I know that getting an agent on there, you can do that so much more efficiently once you have that in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So much more efficiently and more securely.
Right. Right. Another question, which is, well, let me go to this one here. Let's go to this. When delivering a baseline for monitoring, what are some of the items that we should consider for overall monitoring?
When delivering a baseline for monitoring, what are the items we should consider for overall monitoring? So if I'm understanding this correct, right, if I'm understanding this correct, this user wants to understand what's the overall approach. So we've been in the details so far, and the next part of my presentation is going to be about the overall approach. How do we put these details together so it makes more sense for the user and makes it easier for us to use? Okay. So the answer is coming.
The answer is coming. Okay, so we'll wait for part two.
Right.
Question here from Hector, which kind of goes into another question I have here. Says, can we look into the network bottlenecks or drill down into quality of service rules if they're being configured wrong? And kind of the related question is, what if I can't get visibility into a portion of what I need? So, I don't own the ESX stack and I'm not allowed to get statistics there, or, I can't get things from the Cisco routers.
Right. Those are excellent questions. So the number one is, yes, you should be able to look at the QoS stack, and you would be surprised as to how many problems that we find because of firewall rules that are being configured without understanding the overall impact of how it's going to impact the end users. So yes, you need to be able to have visibility into that. To answer your second question, which is, you need to find a solution that has the overall capacity to look into all these layers in an effective manner. And that manner is to look at everything as a contained single unit. Instead of looking at it as individual boxes, if I can look at this as an entire service, that gives me the ability to correlate better. So what happens then is, if I'm missing information from one or two layers, I am able to still point to that layer and say, hey, this layer is where the problem is. So ESX layer is where the problem is. I'm not sure exactly what the problem is because I'm not looking at the ESX layer, but I know based on the entire service view, this is the layer that is having a problem. So the answer to the question is, if you have the right approach, if you put in the right solution, you will be able to, even if you don't have access into every single piece of your infrastructure, and most customers don't. We know that. So you still need to be able to say, okay, that is my black box, and I'm still looking at my black box from a quality of service perspective. I can track it and say, if I'm not getting that quality of service, I'm able to point that finger there because I'm looking at everything else, and everything else is good. That's where my problem is, because my quality of service is broken down there. So you can point the finger there, so then the network administrators or the virtualization administrators who didn't give you the access then can go and figure out what the problem is. But you will still be able to manage your entire service effectively.
Okay, very good. Well, that's the end of the questions we have here for now. Let's go ahead and part two, and we'll get more questions later on, so folks continue to put questions in as you think of them. Okay.
Excellent. And this is another poll that we wanted to do based on what we have said so far, and tagging on to the question one of the audiences asked as to what is the bigger picture view? What are the things that we need to be looking at to put the entire thing together? So from that perspective, here are some of the questions. So what is your key Citrix monitoring requirement for an overall architecture? User experience monitoring? Proactive monitoring? By the way, check everything that applies to you. You don't have to just check one. End-to-end visibility of the Citrix stack. Analytics that delivers right info at the right time. Or more metrics, more graphs to dig through. So we'll give, thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that up. We'll give the users maybe 10 more, 15 more seconds. All right.
Okay, so since you can't see the results very well, tied for first are user experience monitoring and proactive monitoring.
Yep.
And then basically it trickles down from there. So next is the end-to-end visibility, then analytics, then more metrics and graphs.
Right. I'm sure more metrics and graphs got the least amount of hits. That was a trick one we threw in there. Basically, we don't want more metrics and graphs that you're having. But what we've found is when you're having trouble, when you're having issues, when you go through a troubleshooting process, the last thing you need is 20 graphs for you to look through. You want information presented to you in the right manner. So now let's put this all these metrics together. What do we need to do to put it together? What takes us what gives us the speed to resolution? So the last two elements we looked at were reach, end-to-end reach, all the different metrics, depth, deep level metrics into every component that we were looking at. This is focused on speed. How do we do all of this quickly? That means you need to look at a smart Citrix monitoring strategy. You need to look at end-to-end first. So get centralized total service monitoring from one console for all involved elements. Total service monitoring, you need to be able to look at this as a service, all encompassing. So ability to see all your information within one single pane of glass or one tool. All the information that you need should be available in one place that you can go and look at. You shouldn't be logging into 5 different consoles. It should be intelligent. Collecting metrics is not rocket science. A lot of people can do that. It's easy to do that. What you need when you're having trouble is, as you guys already gave us in that poll, you don't need more data and more graphs. You need the right information, the ability to take action because you've been given the right information at the right time. So you need intelligent analytics. You need it automated because you need discovery, monitoring, and then script-based actions for self-healing. So this will really help when you add a new server into your work group, when you do change things in your environment, those should be automatically updated in the software, in your tool that you're going to select. It should be proactive. Obviously, this is important. You don't want to keep chasing. You don't want to keep chasing the problem. You don't want every time the user to call up and complain. You want to be able to see the issues before they start impacting the end users. And last but not least, it should be simple to use. It should help the IT help desk to troubleshoot, to triage easily, so they don't escalate things that they can resolve by themselves. Being simple, giving the right information makes this all the more effective. So if you look at it from a speed perspective, you need to be able to look at it as a service end-to-end. You need to be able to look at all the metrics you need from within one console. It needs to have intelligent analytics. It needs to have automated capabilities to discover, to threshold, to trend. And it should be proactive and simple to use. So you need to be able to get alerts on multiple ways. You should be able to get it on your email, SMS. You should be able to get it into your alerting system, integration with help desk tools. Where is the root cause? So this is a key piece of this overall strategy. The important piece, and we will show you a demo as to how this all comes together. But effectively, you saw all the metrics that we were collecting, that you should be collecting in this strategy. Collecting metrics is great, but if you're able to put this together as a service, because ultimately you saw how the Citrix service is being delivered, that entire service needs to be managed. That entire service needs to be monitored. So when there is a problem, the problem could be anywhere in that service. So that service, it's the same service. We are looking at it from a horizontal view here. We were looking at a vertical view a few slides back. And you can see when the user is having a problem, the challenge is trying to figure out where the problem is coming from. Is it in the access layer? Is it in the delivery layer? Is it in the WAS layer? Is it in the Citrix layer? Where is the problem? And being able to do the root cause here is key in terms of having a successful strategy. And of course, you want to be able to see stuff in mobile today. Now we've seen the big picture view, what we need to have, the overall service view, having everything in one place, correlated analytics, root cause analytics. These are all things that you need for you to have a successful Citrix monitoring solution or Citrix monitoring strategy. And we saw some of the pitfalls to avoid, which is trying to focus on silos, trying to focus on proving Citrix is not the issue, or trying to get more metrics alone. Those are things that are not really helpful for you. More metrics doesn't mean it's more useful. Focus on just user metrics is also not very useful. It's focusing on effect versus the cost. I'm sure there are a lot of folks on the call today who have upwards of 500,000, 5,000, 10,000 users. We've dealt with customers anywhere from 50 users to 100,000 plus users. And for the most part, the most important thing that they need is to understand why a particular problem is happening and how it's impacting the users. If you're just looking at user metrics, you're then missing the root cause of the problems. You're just focusing on the effects. And if you've got 1,000 plus users, 10,000 users, 20,000 users, and your only view to the entire environment is a user-based view, then you're shot. You cannot do much with it. The same way, silo view into Citrix world, you never get the complete picture. So you can effectively prove or maybe sometimes claim that this is not a Citrix issue, but we know that strategy doesn't get us very far unless we resolve the problem, unless we are able to say exactly where the problem is or what the problem is. And for that, you need the complete end-to-end picture. You need better analytics. So don't fall for the more graphs is more useful trap or more metrics is a more useful trap. Imagine yourself in a situation where you're troubleshooting a problem where your users are complaining. You would not have time to look at 20 different graphs or 50 different metrics on every server to analyze what is going on. You want a software that can do all this for you and provide the end result. And last but not least, UI just for admins. We need to externalize this data that we collect to various different stakeholders. We need to be able to have a solution that can provide user interface for help desk purposes, user interface for administrative purposes, user interface for management purposes, user interface for capacity purposes. It's not enough if only the Citrix admin can use this tool. So these are some of the pitfalls that you need to avoid. Now with that, let's say this is where we started the problem diagnostics, looking slow and manual. And I want to walk you through a demo in the next couple of minutes to give you a feel for how an integrated, smart performance management strategy solution looks like for Citrix. That's a culmination of everything that we've talked about so far. So I'm actually connecting into our EG demo that is hosted in our cloud, and I'm logging in as Adam. As soon as I log in, you will see what is being presented to the administrator and user here. So I am being told the different types of problems that are happening. This is the current alarm window, all the different types of problems that are happening and their priorities. So it is telling me that these are the issues and this is the priority. The lower priority is a less severe color of in the spectrum, which is the yellow is the lowest priority, orange is medium priority, and red is critical priority. Critical priority means you need to address it right now because it's impacting other things. So notice how many issues that are happening here. There are over 10 issues, but it's made much simpler for me because I just need to focus on this one critical priority. And this critical priority right now is telling me that there is something wrong with the ESX, there is high CPU utilization. I can click on Diagnostics, and it is going to show me that something running in CSX, it's a samba.exe, it's a backup process, is consuming a lot of CPU that's choking this ESX host. Now, these are Citrix servers that are running on the ESX host that are being impacted. All the trickle-down effects are right here, but I'm being given the root cause that I need to go address. Right now, I can forward this email. This will automatically be sent to me as an email, or it can be configured to be sent to a mobile device or sent to the virtualization admin or sent to a trouble ticketing device. So right away, already the problem is being taken care of. Nobody has to log in to the tool and start looking into the tool. And more importantly, as soon as the CPU consumption started increasing here, an alert would have gone out. So potentially this would have prevented the escalation issues from happening before it started impacting users. But let's take a look at how the software is laid out so you can see how we've gotten to this. So this is the home page. Let's look at the partner access. This is the service that's having a problem. So you can see the end user experience statistics here. Accessing applications taking a long time, updating items taking a long time. So the end user is impacted. You can see the end user is impact. But instead of saying, here is your problem, we are saying this is a minor alert. So you drill down, and you see the end-to-end service topology. And this is what I was talking about when I was talking about you need to have an end-to-end view that has a service view. So that means I know these are the elements, these are the applications and the platforms that are working together to deliver this service to the end user. And I can track the health of every single component, and these arrows indicate dependency. That means this XenApp is dependent on this delivery controller. This delivery controller is using this XenApp. This XenApp is using this file server. This XenApp is using the provisioning server. So in this case, so somebody asked a question, if I'm not able to get all these access into all these elements, how will it still work? Since you're able to get access into a lot of these elements, you're not just looking at Citrix, whichever element you can't get access to in your environment will become a black box. So you will still have this level where you will be able to see it in the map and you will be able to see the health of it. Now, if I drill into XenApp, you will be able to see all the detailed metrics of XenApp. First, it's showing me that it's part of ESX host that is having a bigger issue. So let me drill down into XenApp. It's giving me all the metrics that I can see in the XenApp. But this gives you the level of detail that you need to have all the metrics. So there are thousands of metrics here. So I won't go into each and every metric. What you're seeing is a teaser, and you can look at the entire metric stack and stuff like that. If you're interested to know more details, you can reach out to us and we will walk you through a full-fledged technical demo. But what you're seeing is the culmination of everything put together end to end. So you can see the Citrix being delivered as a service, Citrix service being consumed, and even if there are any spots where you don't have full visibility, you will still be able to map them like this, and you will be able to track the QoS, quality of service. You can look at black box, you can look at the SLAs for those and see if those elements are causes of your problems. So in this scenario, coming back to the demo, you can see that the user impact was up there in the front. So the transactions were slow, right? And you can see the XenApp is having an issue. So CPU time is high. So if I drill into XenApp, I can see that it's part of ESX, and ESX is having the bigger issue. And that issue is the one we saw in the alert window. So you're able to see it end to end, and that is how it is able to say, look, there is an impact, there is an issue in VM that is impacting the XenApps that are running on top, and that is impacting the end user sessions. So when the user picks up the phone and complains to you that my transactions are slow, an unrelated VM to your Citrix that is running on the shared ESX source is not the first place you're going to look at. But having a solution such as EG, with the monitoring strategy that we talked about, this this is something that we've learned over a decade and a half working with Citrix customers, where we understand this is what Citrix customers need. This is what is most effective for them. So having this visibility means quickly you are able to see, where's my alarm window? Current alarms. Quickly you're able to see this is where my issue is. That's what I need to get resolved. And more importantly, this will be proactive, because when you start consuming over 70–80% of CPU from one VM across the entire host, you will start getting a proactive alert. And if it gets addressed at that time, you would have prevented this entire issue from happening. And then we wouldn't have a demo. So now, one more thing I want to show before I go back to the session is, if you notice, even if you're able to get 4 or 5 tools to collect all the metrics that you can collect with EG, if you don't have that correlation, if you don't have that service view, if you don't have that analytics, you will still end up with something like this. And this might be spread across multiple screens. So you're looking at 10 different things that are problems. Now you have to determine where the priority is, which one you need to address. And you can clearly see that's a much bigger, much harder problem to crack than just having to go, oh, that's where my problem is. That needs to get fixed. That's the team that needs to get assigned for it. Now with that, let me go back and summarize our session. We just looked at the EG Enterprise, which deploys all the strategies we talked about and avoids all the pitfalls we talked about for Citrix performance management. We work with Netscaler, we work with the Director, we work with SCOM, and we can collect metrics from across the Citrix platform. Not just Citrix platform, we are truly an end-to-end performance management tool. Citrix is one of the services, one of the applications that we support. We, in reality, support up to slightly over 190 different types of platforms and applications, so different types of SQL servers, different types of web applications, and different hosted services. We have a lot of interesting technology that enables us to do it, but you can see here that we are highlighting that we are covering everything that we talked about in our monitoring strategy. But getting back to the monitoring strategy, in the interest of time, to summarize reach, depth, you need to be able to reach across the entire spectrum of Citrix services, go deep into each and every one of those spectrum, and you need to have the speed, which comes by having intelligence added to the top. Those should be your key Citrix monitoring requirements. And here are the pitfalls to avoid. With that, I'll throw it back to Q&A.
Okay, we got a couple of questions in here from Mark, and let me just kind of put them together. And as you were showing all of the nice graphical layout in there, he wanted to know how that gets set up. Is it kind of automatic? Is it part of the discovery, or is it something he has to place the pieces in? And the other question is, how do you set a baseline? If you already have a poorly performing infrastructure, how do you properly set a baseline to indicate where the real problems are?
Excellent question. So I'll take the first question. How does this topology get built? It can be built automatically, so the system can discover the map and then add it into the environment, and you can also do it manually. Usually it's a combination of both. It discovers most of what is in there, and you as an administrator go in and approve the discovery mapping. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do with the tool. And adding and building it is also very straightforward, takes minutes. The second question is baselining. It's a very important question. It is something that can make or break a solution. So we've spent a lot of time in terms of baselining and thresholding. So we come out of the box with turnkey baselines. So we work with Citrix, we work with Microsoft, we work with all the different software vendors to identify the key thresholds that need to be there for the key performance metrics. So then we put it in place, we bake it into the solution automatically. And the second thing we do is some of these things change from an environment to environment, number of TCP connections, number of Citrix sessions. These things change from an environment to environment. So those things are managed by what we call as auto baselining. So it automatically trends based on your environment. A combination of these two gives us the ability to say, okay, this is how your environment baseline is, but according to the industry standards that we've learned, this is not good. So we will be able to track the baseline as it is in your environment, and then we will be able to say whether that is acceptable or not acceptable. And then it will morph its baseline according to what it sees in your environment. So it will go in and help you get to a healthier baseline. And all of this is turnkey. It comes with, you don't have to add metrics, you don't have to add models or anything. It all comes pre-built, so it can do its self-discovery, and it already knows if it's a Citrix server, these are the 800 metrics that I need to collect. If it's a SQL server, these are the 600 metrics that I need to collect. It comes pre-built with it, including the thresholds.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach. So as I asked the next question, we did do a request from David. If you could put the slide with the mobile phone back up, he wanted to see that in detail.
Okay.
So the other questions I have here are pretty technical questions. Let's see. One is they were interested in what type of database is running, as well as what the refresh rate from the agent is in terms of pulling the metrics. And is it a pull or a push?
Okay. I'll take one question at a time. The first thing is what type of a database we run. We can run Oracle or SQL. And this is a software that you can run yourself, or we can provide it as an on-demand cloud service. If you pick Oracle or SQL to run it in your environment. The second question was regarding frequency of the agent data collection. So the interesting thing that we have done is we are looking at maybe about 30 different aspects of a Citrix server. When I just look at Citrix alone, or if I look at Netscaler, everything, we look at multiple different aspects. And every aspect is being tested on an average once every minute or two. But we are running it in a multi-threaded manner. So effectively, every few seconds, something is being tested on the system, and that data is pushed onto the manager. There's no pull. The manager doesn't come in and talk to the agent. It's only one-way communication, which is a push from the data collector if it's agentless, or the agent if it's agent-based. It's a push that goes from that into the manager where the data is stored. The user interface that I showed you is where we go into the database and collect the data and show you. So it's pretty much real time. Every few seconds, some test is running to check the status, collect the metrics, and then that gets pushed through into the data collector.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty similar approach to what I've done on some other products in the past. I think it's smart.
Right. One of the things that it's very, very small. It reduces the amount of impact you will have because you're staggering all the different things you're running. You're not running everything in one big shot. And also it reduces the amount of data you send over the pipe because it's all small chunks that are going out. And it also keeps you constantly touching the system. That means you're constantly able to pick up anything that is going wrong, and you're always current with the environment. And also reduces the impact that is on the system. I just want to make a comment on this mobile thing. I just picked up a slide, so this is just one of the different things that you can do. If you search for EG Citrix Monitor in the App Store or the Android store, which is what the Google store, then you should be able to download this thing. Or we can give you a full overview of how the different screens will look like in the mobile screen. But this is just a sample screen.
Okay, well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We do have a few more questions in the queue, and Bala will simply answer them online. You can come back probably, I'm guessing, tomorrow, whenever you get the link for the recording, and you should be able to find the answers to those at that point. So, Stephanie, do you want to pick it up?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. I know we do have some questions that didn't get answered, and so I know we're running out of time, and I will send those on to Bala, like Tim mentioned. Just very, very quickly, we did put a survey link in the chat window for you. We'd love to get your feedback on today's presentation. It helps us plan future webinars, and I know our presenters always like to hear your comments. I've also put a link to upcoming webinars on CUGC out in the chat, so you can check out our webinar calendar. We always have a lot of user shares and stuff coming up for you guys. So check those out. And then finally, for those of you who opted in for a chance to win a Google Home, the winner will be selected after the webinar. We will announce it on Twitter and on mycugc.org, so be sure to follow us out there on Twitter. All right. Love to let you guys get back to your day. Thank you so much, Bala. It was a great presentation. And thank you, Tim, for taking care of all those questions for us and keeping an eye on those. Really appreciate it. All right, I will say goodbye. I hope everyone has a great afternoon and look out for the link to the recording tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Bye.